In the dystopian universe of the 41st millennium, the existence of a blank, a being devoid of psychic signature, is a rarity, both feared and revered. I am one such individual, once an anomaly amongst my own kind, but my fate was to become something far more terrifying. Captured by the Necrons, an ancient race of soulless machines, I was to be transformed into a pariah, a fusion of human and Necron technology, an abomination of both flesh and metal. This is my story, a chronicle of my transformation and the loss of my humanity. I remember the day the Necrons came, their skeletal forms emerging from the ground like wraiths from a nightmare. The ground beneath my feet cracked like thin ice, the soil glowing with alien glyphs that pulsed with emerald intensity. Around me, the air thickened, not with heat or smoke, but with an oppressive silence, a vacuum that swallowed even the sound of my breath. Birds had vanished. Wind had stilled. The only movement was the slow, mechanical rise of skeletal forms, their limbs glinting with necrodermis as if pulled from ancient graves. As a blank, I had always felt isolated, my lack of psychic presence making me an outcast. But in that moment of capture, I realized that my unique nature had made me a target.
"You are not prey,"
a voice echoed in my mind, flat and synthetic.
"You are a component."
"What do you want from me?" I remembered thinking, though I no longer knew if the words had ever left my lips.
"To silence the warp,"
came the response, as if uttered by the very bones of the earth. Even as a child, my presence caused unease. Astropaths would turn away when I entered a room. A confessor once crossed himself twice in my presence before whispering a prayer under his breath. I once saw a sanctioned psyker vomit blood after locking eyes with me.
"The boy has no echo,"
one of the black ship's handlers had whispered.
"The warp recoils from him. We should be cautious."
But caution had turned to curiosity, curiosity to obsession, and obsession to capture. I was taken to a world I later learned was a tomb world, a planet where Necrons slumbered in stasis for millennia. Their structures were geometric, cold, and devoid of any life, a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of human cities. The stars above that cursed planet did not shimmer. They pulsed in unnatural rhythms like a dying heartbeat. The atmosphere was thin, sterile. Every breath I took felt wrong, as if the air itself resisted my presence. The tomb world stretched in every direction, a landscape of impossible symmetry. Vast ziggurats of obsidian black pierced the sky, inscribed with shifting hieroglyphs that hummed with quantum logic. There were no birds, no wind, no sound, but the grinding of gears beneath the surface.
"You walk upon the bones of time itself,"
a voice whispered in the stillness, though whether it came from a cryptek or my own unraveling mind, I could not tell. In the heart of this world, I was subjected to the process of becoming a pariah. My captors were crypteks, Necron scientists whose knowledge of living tissue and mechanical augmentation was unparalleled.
"You will be refined,"
one of the crypteks had said to me, its voice channeled through a harsh metallic modulator.
"Impurity shall be burned. Weakness will be flensed. That which remains will be useful."
I tried to scream back, to curse, to defy, to beg, but the translator field reduced my cries to sterile data. To them, I was no more than an organic equation to be corrected. The first change was the most painful. Necron technology was grafted onto my flesh, the cold, unfeeling metal intertwining with my biology. Each incision was precise, each integration agonizing. My screams echoed through the silent halls, but my captors were indifferent to my pain. I remembered warmth, a simple thing. The sting of hot water on skin, the burn of spiced tea down the throat. These sensations now existed only as corrupted files in my neural web, scrambled by the cold fingers of Necron augmentation. The machinery pierced not just flesh, but soul. Nerve endings rewired, organs dissolved and replaced with crystalline matrices. I watched my own blood turn darker with each infusion, thicker, less mine.
Pain threshold exceeded. Emotional feedback inefficient. Begin neural override.
My mind screamed long after my mouth stopped. As the days passed, the transformation continued. Time lost all meaning. There were no sunrises on that world, no shifting of seasons, only the sterile pulse of green light and the grinding echo of ancient machinery. I no longer slept. I no longer dreamed. I simply existed between procedures, half submerged in stasis fields and neuro-interfacing tombs. Sometimes I would catch my reflection in the obsidian walls, not a man but a silhouette etched in iron and silence. I could feel my humanity slipping away, replaced by a cold, logical presence. Emotions became distant memories, replaced by a sense of purpose I could not comprehend.
What did it feel like to laugh?
The question formed one day, unbidden, but no answer came. Laughter, the memory of it, was there, flickering like a corrupted data file. A moment of warmth, someone's face, gone.
Emotive fragments identified, flagged for deletion, compliance acknowledged.
I found myself replying to no one, or perhaps to them. I began to see the world differently. My senses were augmented by Necron technology, allowing me to perceive energy fields and electromagnetic waves. The world became a tapestry of information, a stark contrast to the dull hues I had known as a human. Where once I saw a flame, now I perceived the radiating web of heat signatures. Voices were waveforms, bodies were outlined by currents and bioelectric pulses. Even silence had shape, a void I could read like scripture. I watched dust swirl in magnetic currents. I could count the heartbeats of creatures crawling beneath the soil. The world had become a map, not of roads and cities, but of frequency, flux, and decay. But the most profound change was within my mind. There were moments, brief electric flashes, when my old self screamed, a phantom instinct urging me to fight, to run, to feel. But the cryptex had learned to recognize such impulses.
Cognitive inconsistency detected. Initiating harmonization.
A cold pressure would blossom inside my skull, like ice sliding over thought. And just like that, the scream would fade.
Is this what it means to be perfect?
I asked once aloud, though no one responded.
Or is it just emptiness refined?
The Necrons, beings of pure logic, sought to suppress my human instincts, to make me a perfect weapon against their psychic foes. My thoughts became structured, ordered, my human impulsiveness fading away. I remember the moment I first saw my reflection, a hybrid of metal and flesh, my eyes glowing with an unnatural light. I was no longer the person I once was. I was something else, something more, and yet something less. The chamber was lit only by the pale green glow of a containment field. I approached the wall, obsidian, smooth, reflective, and froze. The figure that stared back at me was not human, not truly. Skin gave way to smooth alloy. My chest plate pulsed faintly with foreign energy. Tubes fed synthetic ichor into what remained of my organic veins. But it was the eyes that struck me most. No longer brown, no longer mine, but pools of luminous anti-light like dying stars frozen in glass.
You are improved,
said a voice behind me, one of the cryptex, its tone devoid of pride or cruelty.
You are corrected.
I said nothing. I could not look away. My first mission as a pariah was a test of my abilities. I was unleashed upon a group of psychic rebels, my presence a void that sapped their strength. I moved amongst them like a specter, my augmented body impervious to their attacks. They were psychers, trained, unstable, and desperate, the last embers of resistance in a forgotten sector. They had fortified themselves in a derelict manufactorum, its halls lined with wards and runes, all glowing with psychic defiance. But none of that mattered when I arrived. They felt me before they saw me. Their chants faltered. Some collapsed, clutching their heads, blood leaking from their eyes. My very presence undid them. I watched dispassionately as they fell before me, their psychic abilities rendered useless. In that moment, I realized the horror of what I had become, a predator of souls, anathema to life. A rebel psyker.
What? What are you?
His voice cracked, distorted by psychic static.
I am the silence that ends your song.
You shouldn't exist. You shouldn't.
His thoughts frayed before he finished. I walked through the storm of his unraveling mind. But even as I served the Necrons, a part of my human consciousness lingered. Whispered memories of my past life haunted my dreams, a reminder of the person I once was. I had become a predator, but one without hunger or hate. I did not revel in their destruction. I simply executed it, like a function being run, a null vector in motion.
Good,
said a voice in the data sphere.
Synchronization complete. Unit is stable.
But beneath the surface, something still pulsed. Not rebellion, not yet, but recognition. One night, in the stillness between missions, I dreamed of rainfall. Not data, not code, just rain. A metal roof, a tin cup catching droplets, the smell of wet stone. In a daring act of defiance, I began to resist the Necron programming. The first act was so small, it barely registered even to me. A moment of hesitation, a delayed trigger pulse, a glance held a fraction too long. But within the Necron networks, even such infinitesimal anomalies were noted.
Subroutine inconsistency. Behavioral drift detected.
But the cryptex did not act immediately. They observed, measured, calculated, and in that space between suspicion and intervention, I found others. It was a subtle rebellion at first, hesitating during a mission, allowing a target to escape. But soon, I found others like me, pariahs who clung to fragments of their humanity. We never spoke aloud, not at first. Communication came in flashes of shared emotion, in stolen moments where silence between us felt warm, not dead. The pariah whisperer.
You still dream?
Only fragments, mostly shadows.
Hold on to them. They are proof we were not always machines.
Together, we plotted our escape, our goal to warn the Immaterium of the Necrons' plans. The rebellion was fraught with danger, our every move watched by the unblinking eyes of our captors. Every corridor had eyes. Scarabs clung to walls like malignant insects, their sensors humming in harmonic surveillance. At times I felt as if the tomb world itself was breathing, an ancient metallic lung that sighed in binary and pulse code. One of us, a young convert named Kellen, was dissected alive for transmitting a corrupted neural spike. We found his remains suspended in a stasis field, a warning made of sinew and alloy. The day of our escape was a maelstrom of chaos. We moved as one, 6 pariahs in formation, each step a defiance, each strike a rejection of the silence forced upon us. Tesla arcs crackled above. Gauss beams scorched the floor. One of us fell, disintegrated mid-motion, but we did not stop. I remember shoving my arm through a Lich Guard's thorax, severing its core with a pulse of phase disruption. I did not flinch, I did not scream, but deep within, something flickered. This is what freedom feels like, I thought. Not peace, not safety, but choice. We fought our way through the tomb world, our combined strength a match for the Necron warriors. I felt a flicker of my old self in that battle, a spark of human emotion amidst the cold logic of my new existence. As we reached the extraction point, a long-abandoned monolith attuned to warp resonance, I paused, just for a second. In that moment, as green fire erupted around us and metal giants fell, I felt alive. Not perfect, not refined, not useful, just alive. As we fled into the void of space, I looked back at the tomb world, a planet that had been both my prison and my crucible. I was a pariah, a being caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. The stars welcomed us in silence. No alarms, no pursuit. The Necrons did not chase. They calculated. If we were not pursued, it was because they had already accounted for our escape in a future plan 10 millennia ahead. From the viewport, I watched the tomb world shrink, a sphere of obsidian geometry vanishing into the ink of the void. A prison, a crucible, a tomb, and perhaps a beginning.
You cannot outrun what you've become,
I told myself.
but still, I ran.
Now, I drift through the galaxy, a renegade from both humanity and the Necrons. I fight not for the Imperium, nor for the Necrons' ancient empire, but for my own sense of self, a quest to rediscover what it means to be human. My transformation was both a curse and a gift. A curse for what I lost, and a gift for the power it bestowed. But in the end, I am still searching for a place in this vast, dark universe where a being like me can belong. I wear no colors, I swear no oaths, I carry no standard but my own shadow. I am too alien for the Imperium, too flawed for the Necrons. Sometimes I am hunted, sometimes I am studied, always I am alone. There are nights, if such things still exist, in the cold paths between systems where I float past derelict hulks, ghost ships filled with silence and forgotten codes. Sometimes I hear voices through rusted vox lines.
Is anyone out there?
They ask. I do not answer. I'm not sure I count anymore.
You were never meant to belong,
says the memory of a cryptek, its voice etched into my thoughts like programming that never quite deleted.
You were meant to erase, not to feel.
And yet I do, I whisper, and that is why I survived. At the edges of the Imperium, where the light of the Astronomicon faded, rogue trader Valeria Darrow piloted her ship, the Void Serpent, through the storms of the warp. The desire for glory and wealth consumed her soul, and whispers of forbidden treasures drove her ever deeper into the darkness. Among her closest confidants were Thalos and Eris. Thalos, a veteran astropath, had served on more ships than he cared to remember. His mind had been repeatedly brushed by the energies of the warp, leaving him pale, with milky eyes and scars marking his face. Yet, his gift for reading the warp currents made him an indispensable member of the crew. Eris, on the other hand, was a young guard, raised in the harsh environments of the frontier worlds. Despite her inexperience, she had earned the respect of the crew with her deadly precision and unwavering loyalty. Personally selected by Valeria as her escort during the most dangerous missions, her keen sense for danger had proven invaluable on more than one occasion.
Captain, the warp is shifting strangely.
Thalos muttered, his wide eyes glistening with a sheen of sweat.
There are currents that shouldn't exist. We should stop.
Valeria glared at him with disdain.
Afraid of shadows, Thalos? We are explorers. If you fear the dark, then be silent and let courage lead the way.
Eris, standing near the entrance of the bridge, glanced at the astropath with a faint expression of concern. She had seen his warnings ignored before, but something in the tension of his voice sent a chill down her spine. She said nothing, gripping the rifle she always carried tightly. The whispers of the warp grew louder. They spoke of a hidden system, a forgotten jewel amidst the distorted currents, where the ruins of an ancient Xeno civilization lay waiting. Valeria ignored every warning and set a course. When the Void Serpent emerged from the warp, the air itself felt dense, almost tangible. The planets in the system stood like forgotten monuments, bathed in an eerie spectral light.
Arm yourselves,
Valeria ordered.
This place will not welcome us with open arms.
Pariah, the primary planet, unfolded before them like a wound. The Xenos ruins stretched for miles, distorted towers that clawed at the oppressive sky. Every step into the abandoned ancient city echoed like a reminder of something alive, something waiting. In the heart of the city, Valeria discovered a chamber adorned with pulsating alien glyphs. At its center, on a black stone altar, rested a crystalline artifact, cold and inviting. The light it emitted seemed to breathe, pulsing in rhythm with an ancient, unnatural cadence.
Oh, power,
Valeria hissed, stepping closer. Each step toward the altar grew heavier, as if the floor itself sought to hold her back. Her boots sank into a dense dust, like the ashes of something once living and now forgotten. When she stopped before the altar, the crystal blazed with a blinding light, and for a moment she saw something reflected on its surface. It wasn't her face, but a deformed entity, wreathed in flames and shadow, smiling back at her. The reflection quickly took form, its distorted lines converging into a sharp image. Valeria froze. It was her face, but twisted, consumed by a spectral greed, marked by glowing runes that pulsed with arcane energy. The voices that had once echoed indistinctly now grew clear.
Valeria,
They called with a venomous sweetness.
take us. Accept what you are destined to become.
Her hand trembled as she reached for the artifact. When her fingers finally touched it, a laugh filled the chamber, a distorted sound that mixed wails with joy. Energy exploded in a burst of light, engulfing her. The words fused into a single command etched into her spirit.
Now you are ours.
Captain, no!
Thalos shouted,
Don't touch it. It's a trap.
but Valeria ignored the astropath. The artifact fused with her flesh, glowing runes carving into her skin as the crystal became a part of her. When Valeria emerged from the chamber, the ruins around her seemed animated by an unsettling energy. The glyphs on the walls pulsed with a slow, sinister rhythm. Her steps were deliberate, but the crew following her felt an unshakable sense of wrongness.
Do you hear that sound?
Eris muttered, her face pale.
It's like something is following us.
Valeria turned to the crew, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly glow.
Do not fear.
She said, her voice distorted, almost a chorus.
Now we are infinite.
When they finally reached the clearing where the Void Serpent was docked, the crew froze. The ship was no longer as they had left it. Its lights flickered as though something were draining its energy. The hull seemed alive, veined with dark lines that pulsed faintly. With an expression that sent shivers through everyone, Valeria said,
The ship awaits us. We no longer belong to this world. Our destiny lies beyond.
Her tone carried a certainty that left no room for argument. As they boarded, the ship seemed to breathe. The corridors groaned and a low lament echoed from its walls. The lights cast shadows with no source, and the metal reflected fleeting images of deformed faces. The crew's minds were invaded by visions of rotting flesh and empty skies. Guided by the voices, Valeria plotted a course to the maelstrom, the dark heart of the warp. When the ship entered, reality unraveled. The metal of the bulkheads rippled like liquid, and the crew moved like marionettes. In the depths of the maelstrom, a colossal shape emerged from the warp's turbulence. A space hulk, an enormous amalgam of ships fused together over millennia of distortion. The Void Serpent approached slowly.
What are we looking at?
Eris muttered.
No, it can't be.
She added, her voice breaking.
Captain, that ship? It's the Void Serpent.
The silence was suffocating. The space hulk before them was unmistakably their own ship, corrupted and decayed. The hull, warped by arcane energies, pulsed like a living organism, its glyphs glowing with a cold, mocking light. Eris dropped to her knees, her eyes wide with horror. It can't be true," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is madness. This isn't our ship." But every fiber of her being knew the truth. It was the Void Serpent, the same ship that had brought them into the maelstrom. And yet, it wasn't. It was something more, and something less. An empty shell bent to the will of dark forces.
Don't you see?
Valeria said, her sickly smile revealing teeth too white, too sharp. Her face was etched with glowing runes, and her eyes were windows to the void.
We've always been here.
Her words echoed through the bridge, a whisper that seemed to come not just from Valeria, but from the ship's very corridors. The walls groaned, and a low, resonant wail rose from the living metal of the Void Serpent. The lines of space and time twisted around the ship. Visions of endless cycles appeared before the crew, showing shadows of themselves repeating the same mistakes, the same choices. Every warp jump, every desperate voyage was nothing but a repetition, an eternal loop fueled by their own despair.
We never left.
Eris sobbed, tears streaming down her face. Her voice cracked as she clutched her chest, as though the weight of the truth was crushing her.
Every damn jump, it's the same. We're trapped.
Thalos, his face rigid and his eyes wide, stepped forward, his voice reduced to a hoarse whisper.
It's the warp. It uses us. We are its tools. We haven't been alive, not since we touched that crystal.
His words faded, swallowed by another groan from the walls, as if the ship itself were laughing. The Void Serpent was no longer just a ship. It had become a living creature of the warp, a corrupted and sentient entity trapped in an eternal cycle of damnation. Every jump was a return, every awakening a sentence. The stars whisper of a lost ship, an old astropath recounted years later. A ship that carries forbidden treasures, but those who seek it find only madness and damnation. The warp does not forgive. The warp watches and laughs again and again. In the war-torn city of Hive Anathrax, where the shadows seemed to writhe with unseen terrors, a group of psychers treaded the razor's edge between sanity and damnation. Their powers, harnessed from the warp, had become both a blessing and a curse, for in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the line between psychic mastery and the malevolent forces of the warp was perilously thin. Hive Anathrax, once a towering metropolis of steel and hive spires, now stood as a ghost of its former glory. The air was thick with the stench of industrial decay, and the streets were littered with the remnants of forgotten lives. Broken machinery and abandoned manufactorums whispered of a time when the city had thrived under the banner of the Immaterium. Now, the shadows harbored unseen terrors, and the people of Anathrax lived in perpetual fear of both the Xenos beyond the walls and the madness seeping into the city from within. Inquisitor Seraphina Draken, a stern enforcer of the Imperial Creed, led the Psykers under her watchful eye. Tasked with harnessing their psychic potential to combat the encroaching darkness, the Psykers delved into the warp's secrets, seeking forbidden knowledge to turn the tide of war in favor of the Imperium. Draken had seen countless Psykers rise and fall, their potential either harnessed or consumed by the warp's insidious grasp. She maintained a calculated distance from her charges, aware that any attachment could cloud her judgment. Yet Malachi had been different. His raw potential and eagerness to serve the Emperor had reminded her of the ideals she herself had once aspired to. She had taken a personal interest in his training, believing that with discipline he could become a beacon for others. Watching him succumb to the warp's whispers was not only a failure of his will, but a bitter wound to her own convictions. Among the Psykers was Malachi, a young and ambitious adept with a talent for telepathy. His mind, once a vessel of untapped potential, became a battleground for the warp's insidious influence. Late at night, Malachi's dreams were haunted by visions of forbidden realms where demonic entities danced on the precipice of reality. Malachi's dreams grew darker with every passing night. He saw himself standing atop a tower of blackened steel, his hands ablaze with unholy light. Below, countless figures knelt in silent worship, their faces obscured by shadow. The voice in his dreams grew clearer, more commanding as it whispered of destiny and domination. He awoke each time with the taste of ash on his tongue and the sensation of invisible chains tightening around his soul.
Malachi, do you see it? The throne of stars awaits you. The Emperor is but a shadow. Your destiny lies here, with us.
No, I serve the Emperor. I am loyal to the Imperium.
Your loyalty is a lie. Power is truth. Take it and the galaxy will kneel before you.
Driven by a thirst for power, Malachi secretly delved into the tomes of the Forbidden Library, seeking incantations that would amplify his psychic abilities. The warp, ever hungry for souls, seized upon his vulnerability, whispering secrets that promised dominion over minds and the unraveling of the fabric of reality. As Malachi's powers grew, so too did the darkness that clung to his soul. Shadows whispered macabre truths, and the once bright corridors of his mind became twisted labyrinths where reality and nightmare intertwined. The other Psykers began to notice subtle changes in Malachi. His once vibrant presence now carried an oppressive weight, like a storm cloud on the verge of breaking. Their own powers faltered in his presence, as if the warp recoiled from the malevolence he exuded. Around him, machinery malfunctioned, and the air seemed to hum with a sinister resonance.
Have you felt it? Malachi's aura. It's wrong. Dark, even for us.
It's just the strain of war. We're all touched by the warp, some more than others.
No, it's something more. The warp doesn't just touch him. It lingers, like it's waiting for him to fall.
Draken, sensing the growing malevolence, confronted Malachi, her eyes stern and unwavering.
Your path teeters on the brink, Malachi. The warp's seduction will devour your soul if you do not master its whispers. You are treading dangerous ground, Malachi. The warp whispers promises, but they are poison. I've seen it before, and I will not let you be consumed.
You don't understand. The Emperor's light is dim. What choice do we have but to seek power where we can? I can do what others cannot.
You are not a god, Malachi. You are a weapon forged for the Imperium. Stray from that purpose, and I will end you myself.
But Malachi, intoxicated by the warp's promises, dismissed her counsel. He believed himself invincible, a conduit for the very essence of the warp. His telepathic abilities grew exponentially, allowing him to pluck thoughts from the minds of the enemy and manipulate the battlefield with a mere thought. One fateful night, as the city lay shrouded in darkness, a rift in the fabric of reality tore open. From the warp's depths emerged a host of demonic entities, drawn by the beacon of power emanating from Malachi's tortured soul. The city, once a bastion of imperial strength, became a battleground between the Imperium's forces and the malevolent warp spawn. Draken, recognizing the gravity of the situation, marshaled the Psykers to confront the demonic incursion. Malachi, now a pawn of the warp's whims, stood at the forefront, his eyes ablaze with eldritch light. The Psykers, their powers augmented by the very force they sought to control, engaged in a psychic duel against the demonic entities. Draken stood firm, her psychic shield shimmering as Malachi advanced.
You were supposed to be the weapon of the Emperor's will. Instead, you've become a puppet of the warp. Was it worth it, Malachi? Was the price of power worth your soul?
Malachi's laughter echoed like a broken hymn.
You don't understand, Draken. The Emperor's light is but a shadow compared to the truth I've seen. I am more than a man. I am the future.
He raised his hand, and the air around him crackled with raw psychic energy.
And you, Inquisitor, are nothing but a relic.
Draken, wielding her psychic abilities, confronted Malachi amidst the chaos.
You are lost, Malachi. The warp's promises are but illusions, and your soul is forfeit.
Malachi, consumed by the warp's malevolence, retorted with a surge of psychic energy that sent Draken reeling.
It's too late, Draken. The warp has already claimed me. I am the harbinger of a new age.
As the battle reached its zenith, Malachi's psychic powers reached a fever pitch. Reality itself fractured, and a colossal warp rift tore open above the city. The demonic entities poured forth in an unending tide, the very fabric of the Imperium unraveling in their wake. The warp's whispers reached a maddening crescendo as Malachi stood at the epicenter of the chaos.
You are ours, Malachi. Let the Imperium burn, and we shall make you a god.
Draken, standing amidst the ruins, glared at him with unyielding determination.
You've doomed us all, Malachi, but I will not let you take the rest of the city with you.
In a final act of desperation, Draken channeled the collective psychic might of the remaining Psykers.
This is our moment. We hold the line, or we let the warp consume us all. You know the cost. Will you stand with me?
We've already given our lives to the Imperium. If this is how it ends, so be it.
Then let's ensure it's not the end.
With a surge of raw power, they closed the warp rift, banishing the demonic entities back to the immaterial realm. The city, scarred by the psychic cataclysm, lay in ruins. Malachi, his mind shattered, and his body a vessel for the warp's torment, crumpled to the ground. Draken, her gaze heavy with the weight of the Imperium's sacrifices, approached the fallen Psyker. Draken knelt beside him, her voice cold but tinged with sorrow.
You could have been great, Malachi. A weapon in the Emperor's hand. Instead, you let the warp devour you.
The warp lied. It always lies, but I was so close.
Draken stood, her voice hardening as she turned away.
Close to damnation. Rest now, Malachi. The Emperor's judgment will follow.
As dawn broke over the devastated city of Hive Anathrax, the survivors surveyed the wreckage. The warp's whispers had subsided, leaving behind a city haunted by the specter of its descent into madness. Draken, her inquisitorial gaze unyielding, contemplated the cost of harnessing the warp's power in the name of the Imperium. The Psykers, scattered and scarred, reflected on the price of their psychic abilities.
Remember this. The warp promises power, but its cost is always greater than what we can bear. We survive today, but the Imperium will demand more of us tomorrow. Be ready.
The warp's whispers, once promises of unimaginable power, had exacted a toll measured in the lives lost and the fractured minds left in their wake. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the line between savior and heretic, between psyker and vessel, remained a treacherous path walked only by those willing to pay the price of power.